The sky above Haven wasn't supposed to burn, but it did. Not from sunset, but from war. An alien fleet arrived without warning. 47 warships descending like vultures. No escape. No reinforcements. No hope. Until a desperate signal, fired through ancient alien tech, did the impossible. Because humanity doesn't run. Humanity answers. And when we arrive, we don't come quietly. We come to end the war. Before we dive into this cinematic sci-fi epic, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story where humanity fights back against impossible odds. Now let's begin. The sky above Kalos drift burned, not with the soft amber hues of its usual twilight, but with the violent glare of warships hovering just beyond the clouds. Invaders, hostile and close. Commander Reese Calder stood at the lip of the colony's final defense line, his scarred features caught in the pulse of flickering red emergency lights. 3 days. That's how long the siege had held. 3 days of endless orbital strikes, of anxiety, of watching the perimeter shields disintegrate, section by section. Commander. The voice drifted in from behind. It was Elin Varen, his tactical officer, boots dragging through ash and oil. She held a scorched tablet, her uniform torn and smeared with something that looked like coolant. North walls down to 18%. One more barrage from their flare cannons, and she didn't finish. She didn't have to. They both understood. How many vessels now? Reese asked. His voice was even controlled. Elin's jaw tensed. 47. 3 more Dread-class cruisers jumped in overnight. Reese gave a faint nod. Kalos Drift had been meant to live up to its name. A sanctuary. The first permanent Terran outpost in the Veilstar sector. Built just 15 cycles ago, now shelter to over 5,000 souls. Pioneers, families, children. Dreamers. And now a tomb in waiting. The civilians, he asked. Still secure. Tucked in the subterranean vaults. We've got rations for maybe 2 more weeks, if we stretch it. Another concussive thud rattled the floor beneath them. The ceiling creaked. No one looked up anymore. Shock had long since given way to numb routine. Elin shifted uneasily. The council's requesting a strategy assembly. They're considering surrender. Reese's expression turned to stone. There won't be a surrender. She didn't argue. She'd seen the aftermath. The fate of colonies that bowed to the Maelstrom Collective. Nothing left but glass and static. The Maelstrom had emerged half a cycle ago, crawling out from the dark fringes of map space. No ultimatum. No dialogue. Just annihilation. 3 lesser outposts had vanished before they arrived here. Not a single distress beacon had escaped. We can't do this alone, Elin said. Souls for months out at best, Reese replied. Even if the message got through, it'd be too late. She stepped in, voice lowered. That's not why I came. There's something else. Come with me. They descended. Beneath the heart of the colony, past the sealed residential zones, deeper still, through neglected maintenance shafts and silent backup grids. Elin ducked under a low arch, motioning Reese to follow through the crawlspace. What exactly are we heading for? He asked, his light slicing through the thick shadows. Do you remember when the first Enviro scouts discovered those odd alloy spires embedded in the ridgeline? He nodded. Faintly. He remembered. The towers had been catalogued years ago, old relics, half buried and inert. Archaeologists had deemed them remnants of some long-forgotten culture, dead and dust. No power signatures. No discernible function. Research had been deprioritized, deemed irrelevant compared to getting the settlement operational, Elin continued. Except Calderin in engineering never let it go. When we lost comms with our orbital beacons yesterday, he came to me, said he had a theory. They reached the end of the tunnel. A heavy alloy hatch blocked the path. Elin placed her hand against a crystalline scanner. The door released with a breathy exhale and slid apart. Inside, a chamber opened, vast and carved straight into bedrock. The walls shimmered, plated in metallic geometry that pulsed faintly, though no light touched them. In the center, crouched over an arcane console, stood Calderin. His eyes were red, his hands trembling with exhaustion. "Commander," he said, barely lifting his gaze. "Glad Elon got to you." Reese scanned the chamber, his breath catching. "What is this place?" "It's a relay," Calder said, brushing his fingers across alien glyphs. "But not just a relay. This thing, this whole room, is a communication core, and not of human design." His voice rose with excitement, despite the looming dread. "Whoever built it, they used entangled particles to send messages. Quantum resonance, instantaneous data transfer. No lag, no delay, across light years." Reese's eyes narrowed. "You mean it can reach Earth now?" "Exactly," Elon cut in. "If we activate it, we could bypass normal channels entirely. The signal would arrive within seconds." For the first time in days, a flicker of something moved in Reese's chest. Hope. Fragile, dangerous hope. But it was tempered with caution. "Even if it's real, does it still function?" "That's what I've been trying to verify," Calder said, gesturing to the glowing console. "The core still holds energy, some exotic source we haven't identified. I've managed to create a bridge between it and our own systems. But there's a catch." Reese stepped closer. "What kind of catch?" "The network it was built to connect with it's long gone. Whatever civilization ran it is dust now. No endpoints. No handshake protocols." "So it's useless." "Not exactly," Calder replied. "I think I can reprogram it to fire a raw spectrum burst, a quantum shout into the void. If Earth has any receivers tuned for experimental resonance, they might catch it." "Might," Reese echoed grimly. "It's all we've got," Elon said softly. He looked from one to the other, then around the room, this vault of alien miracles hidden beneath their dying world. "How long?" 6 hours, Calder said. "You've got 3, Reese replied. "North Barrier won't see a 4th. Exactly 3 hours later, the relay stood ready. Reforged from alien alloy and Terran grit, it resembled something born of both nightmare and hope. Their engineers had spliced Terran wires and modules into ancient circuitry, coaxing it to life, if only barely. "The transmission can't be long," Calder warned. "We're running off backup arrays. A few seconds, max. One message. One chance." Reese stepped forward. His shadow stretched across the chamber. He stood before the interface, drew in a slow breath, and hit record. "This is Commander Reese Calder of Kalos Drift. Our world is under siege by the Maelstrom fleet. 47 vessels. Over 5,000 civilians in shelter. Our defenses are failing. Immediate assistance required." Coordinates embedded. As the message pulsed outward into the abyss, the silence that followed was worse than gunfire. The chamber fell silent, thick with uncertainty. No one could say if their cry had reached anyone, if it had even left the void. Then the earth groaned. Another blast rocked the colony overhead. "Everyone move," Reese commanded. "We hold what's left." On board the command vessel of the Maelstrom fleet, Supreme Strategist Zalcor stood before a vast viewport, his slate-gray features awash in the blue glow of tactical readouts. Kalos Drift flickered below, its outer defenses bleeding power. "Outer arc field nearing collapse," reported his weapons officer, tendrils twitching as more data flooded the console. "2 more volleys and surface incursion can commence." Zalcor offered a slow nod, mandibles flaring with grim pleasure. Tenacious creatures, these Terrans. But in the end, they crumble like all the others. A piercing chime interrupted. One of the sensor monitors flickered erratically. "Unidentified energy surge," a technician reported, originating from the human stronghold. It resembled a data burst, but not through conventional space. "Intercept it," Zalcor snapped. "We can't," the technician answered, confused. It vanished, as if it never traveled through known subspace at all. Zalkor's eyes narrowed to slits. Rising from his throne-like command seat, he advanced toward the pulsing holomap of the besieged colony. The glow painted his face in warlike hues. "It's irrelevant," he muttered. "Even if they manage to send a signal, help will not arrive in time. There is no ship that outruns causality itself." He turned toward his crew, a faint clicking sound escaping his throat, their species' version of amusement. "Maintain pressure. Before nightfall, Kalos drift will be ash, just like all the rest." What Zalkor could not know, what his entire species had failed to consider, was that humanity had been quietly pushing past theoretical thresholds he didn't believe possible. And Commander Reese Calder's desperate call had not traveled for months. It had arrived in seconds. Thousands of light years away, the signal struck Earth's planetary defense headquarters at 3:12 Coordinated Terran Time. The Northern Command Hub, nestled in the Canadian sector, was quiet, night shift in full swing. Most officers had already clocked out. Only a skeleton crew remained watching the stars. Lieutenant Aaron Decker sat slumped in his chair, eyes heavy, chin resting on one hand. 20 minutes left. 20 minutes until he could drag himself home to a half-eaten dinner and a soft bed. The displays in front of him scrolled with the usual background chatter. Cargo updates, station alerts, one routine skirmish in the belt. Nothing urgent, until every console screamed to life. Red lights, sirens, auto lockdowns engaged. Aaron's chair jolted beneath him. He straightened like a soldier snapped from a dream. His console bathed in alerts, systems flaring across sectors. A system glitch? Then he heard it. The voice. Crystal clear, echoing as if spoken in the same room. "This is Commander Reese Calder of Kalos Drift. Our world is under siege by the Maelstrom fleet. 47 enemy ships. Over 5,000 non-combatants in shelter. Defenses compromised. Immediate assistance required. Coordinates attached." Aaron froze. Not a distorted signal. Not a degraded audio packet trickling in from the edge of known space. No, the voice was right there, as if Calder was standing 5 feet behind him. "Not light years away, Commander," Decker shouted, his voice cutting through the alarms. "Tier 1 emergency relay, origin point, Kalos Drift." Fleet Marshal Adrian Holt was through the doors in seconds, his lined face set like stone as the message replayed in full clarity. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Kalos is deep in the Veilstar sector. We couldn't receive real-time data from that far out, not with any known tech." "The authentication checks out," Aaron replied, pointing to cascading code on his screen. "Quantum lock verified." The relay hit a frequency outside the standard registry. Something entangled. It bypassed the delay entirely. Holt's jaw tightened. His eyes were already shifting toward strategy. "Get me the high command. Now." 2 hours later, the Situation Room buried beneath Earth's Terran Defense Complex was alive with tension. Every major branch of Earth's interstellar defense was represented. They stood in silence, absorbing what they were seeing. 47 enemy craft, General Elena Vorin said, her voice grave. "Even if we had the ability to get there instantly, which we don't have enough strength in that sector to challenge a fleet of that magnitude." "And Kalos wasn't designed for this kind of siege," Holt added. "Their perimeter was meant to stop raiders, not armadas." A grim quiet settled over the room. Everyone present understood the implications. Kalos Drift wasn't just another dot on the map. It was humanity's flagship colony beyond Sol, a beacon of ambition, unity, and hope. If it fell, others would follow. "If we could reach them," Holt murmured, eyes fixed on the galaxy display with its daunting distances. "Perhaps we can." Heads turned. A young man stood in the doorway, hair tousled, his lab coat hanging loosely over a wrinkled shirt. The badge on his chest read Dr. Elias Wren, Applied Dimensional Mechanics Division. Who authorized this intrusion? Vorin snapped. I did, Holt said quietly. Dr. Wren has been working on something unconventional. Proceed, Holt added. Elias cleared his throat and stepped forward, clearly unused to standing before the most powerful military minds on Earth. He tapped his tablet. In the center of the room, a rotating hologram bloomed into view, angular, sleek, terrifying in its scale. This is Vanguard, Elias began. She's the first prototype of our Singularity-class battlecruisers. We've been experimenting with spatial convergence technology under Project Torrent. Instead of crossing space, we fold it. You're talking about a jump, Holt said, like the signal we received. Elias nodded, his voice steadier now. Exactly. Instead of weeks or months, we could reach the drift in minutes. A stunned silence swept through the room. How many ships can make that jump? General Vorin asked. Elias hesitated, his earlier excitement now dulled by the reality he was about to share. Only one, General, Elias admitted, his confidence wavering. The Vanguard is the sole ship equipped for the jump, and we've only tested it across short distances, nothing remotely close to Veilstar. So you want to throw one unproven vessel against 47 hostile warships, another senior commander scoffed. Not exactly, Marshal Holt interjected, arms crossed in thought. The Vanguard was built with deep load capability. She can carry an entire wing of interceptors and multiple strike teams in her internal bays. She's also armed with the most advanced weapon systems Earth's ever produced. It's still a suicide run, General Vorin argued. Holt turned to Elias. Doctor, what's your best estimate? Elias inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts. The odds of a successful full jump to Veilstar? Around 60%. Margin of error, 5 either way. As for surviving the encounter, he hesitated, that depends on how skilled our people are. The room grew tense. Holt nodded slowly, then turned toward the gathered brass. We're not sending her in blind. We load her with elite strike squads and the top fighter crews we have. If the Vanguard arrives without warning, she'll have total tactical advantage. The Maelstrom won't expect company for months, if ever. And who, Vorin asked coldly, would be reckless enough to volunteer for that kind of mission? Holt allowed himself a tight smile. They already did. In the cavernous hangar of the Vanguard, chaos and purpose danced in unison. Launch drones glided between fighter craft, fueling and loading payloads. Assault teams filed into armored dropships. Engineers in exosuits performed last-minute calibrations on propulsion conduits that had never been pushed this far. At the center of it all, Commander Jace Rennick stood on the bridge, his arms folded behind his back as status feeds scrolled across the main holo display. He was 42, twice decorated in frontier skirmishes, a tactician and pilot with more hours logged in combat than most command staff saw in a lifetime. When the call had gone out, when Holt had asked for volunteers, Jace had been the first to answer. Report, he called out, his voice steady. All systems nominal, Commander, said his executive officer, Lieutenant Kale Aaron, from her console. Engineering confirms the Torrent drive is stable and locked. All personnel accounted for. Combat stations fully manned. Jace gave a nod. In just 12 hours, they had assembled the finest crews from across the planet. Pilots who flew like gravity didn't exist. Soldiers who specialized in impossible odds. Techs who could hack enemy systems mid-firefight. And all of them were now aboard Earth's most dangerous experiment. Elite shock troopers, trained in zero-atmo warfare, volcanic terrains, even the gravity wells of black hole stations, stood ready in full armor. Technicians who could jury-rig propulsion cores mid-battle. And the guests. Jace asked without looking away from the display. Kale gave a faint smile. Special operations are locked in. Colonel Thane says his squad's itching for a real fight. That made Jace grin. Colonel Dax Thane and his covert unit were legends, ghosts in the battlefield. If anyone could reinforce the colony's defenders, it was them. An alert chimed. Fleet Marshal Holt appeared on the bridge display, his voice cutting through the final preparations. Commander Rennick, clearance granted. You are go for launch. Remember, this is a rescue first. Extract those civilians if possible. But your priority is intel. Learn how the Maelstrom fights, then get that knowledge home. With respect, Marshal, Jay said calmly, we're not planning on retreat. For a brief second, Holt's stern features cracked into something like pride. Then go. Make humanity proud. The transmission ended. Jace turned toward his crew. Every eye on the bridge was locked on him. Listen up, he said, voice sharp clear. In a few minutes, we attempt the farthest jump any Terran vessel has ever made. If this works, we'll arrive at Kalos in time to stop a massacre and to remind the Maelstrom what happens when they pick a fight with our people. He paced slowly, his gaze heavy with purpose. I won't sugarcoat it. This is dangerous. The math is solid, but the tech is new. The enemy is overwhelming, but Earth believes in us. The colony is counting on us, and I believe in every one of you. Lieutenant Erin Kale straightened at her station. All systems show ready, Commander. Then let's make history, Jay said. Engage the torrent drive. A deep hum rolled through the Vanguard. The resonance climbed in frequency until it was no longer a sound, but a pressure, thrumming in bone and blood. On the main screen, the stars twisted. The blackness of space rippled and warped, like fabric in a storm. Drive at critical mass, the chief engineer called out. Jump in 3, 2, 1, and then the universe shattered. Outside, the stars streaked into impossibly long lines, then vanished entirely. The Vanguard, its crew, and Earth's final hope tore free from the known cosmos, plunging headfirst into the void. The experience was nothing like the clean simulations. Commander Rennick gripped his chair as the ship convulsed. Space itself screamed. The hull groaned like something alive. The jump drive roared, pushing the vessel past the edges of engineered possibility. Warning indicators exploded across every panel. Status. Jace barked. Kale struggled to stabilize her console, readings jittering and distorted. Unknown, sir. We're through, but sensors aren't online. Position uncertain. Torrent core is overheating. Outside, through the fractured display, reality flickered in unfamiliar shapes. The impossible had begun. Beyond the reinforced glass, Jace saw only chaos, roiling shadows pierced by jagged bursts of violet energy. Lightning, but not. A dimensional current, flickering like the dying light of stars torn from reality. They were drifting through a space between spaces, a corridor not built for human senses. A realm the universe itself seemed to reject. Engineering report. Jace barked into the comm chief systems. Officer Ryn Kelly's voice crackled back through static, strained and barely audible. Drive still holding, Commander, but only just. This isn't what she was built for. We're deep past the red line. Redirect all remaining power to structural shielding and the core, Jace ordered. Already on it, Kale called out from a bridge, fingers flying across her console. But containment is fluctuating. She's fighting us. A sudden jolt rocked the entire vessel, followed by a dull, distant thud like something tearing loose from the hull. Damage report. Jace shouted, gripping his chair as the deck pitched. Tactical feed coming in, the officer responded. Sectors 12 through 15 report hull breaches. Containment fields are in place, but we lost 2 assault craft from Bay 3. Jace swore under his breath. Those strike ships were vital for ground deployment. ETA to Kalos, he asked. Kale shook her head. Impossible to calculate. The NAV arrays reading noise. We're off chart. Could be 10 minutes. Could be 10 hours. Jace pushed up from his command chair, bracing against a tremor that rippled through the floor. "I'm going down to check on our combat teams. You have the bridge, Lieutenant. Stabilize us if you can." "Yes, sir," she said, sliding into the captain's seat. Jace stepped into the lift. In the primary hangar, Colonel Dax Thane stood before his elite troopers, helmeted, armored, and eerily calm amid the shaking of the ship. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were engineered for chaos. The blast doors slid open, and one of the troopers barked, "Commanders on deck." The squad snapped to attention. "At ease," Jace said quickly. "Colonel, a word." Thane stepped away from his formation. His imposing frame made him seem like part of the ship's architecture, weathered, immovable. "How bad?" he asked without hesitation. Jace didn't sugarcoat it. "We're pushing past tolerances. The drive's bleeding energy, and the structure's groaning. If we make it to Kalos intact, it'll be by force of will." Thane nodded, unsurprised. "We've deployed under worse. If Vanguard can't land, we'll drop straight from orbit." "Good," Jace said, but his tone shifted. "There's more." Intelligence flagged something. He handed Thane a tablet. The colonel scanned through rapidly scrolling images. Void craft captured in distant systems. Dated logs. Predictive overlays. "They're not scavengers," Jace said, voice low. "This isn't random. They're targeting every advanced civilization they find systematically, one by one." "This isn't about Kalos," Jace muttered. "It's just the next mark." Thane's expression darkened as he studied the projected data. Timeline overlays, system eradications, confirmed silences. "So this isn't a rescue," he said slowly. "It's containment. We're trying to stop the tide before it reaches Earth." "Exactly," Jace confirmed. "Marshal Holt believes this is prelude, an extermination campaign to clear threats before an assault on Homeworld." He locked eyes with Thane. "Even if we can't save Kalos, we must learn how they fight. We need that data." The ship suddenly jolted hard, violently. Metal shrieked. Both men were thrown against the bulkhead. "Commander Rennick to the bridge, now." Kale's voice crackled through the intercom, clipped and tense. Jace and Thane exchanged a look. "Stand by, Colonel," Jace said, turning for the lift. The bridge was chaos when he arrived. Acrid smoke coiled from a destroyed console. Sparks flew. Crew scrambled between workstations. "Report." Jace shouted above the noise. Kale looked up from the central display, her face pale. "The torrent drive is destabilizing. Something ruptured mid-phase. We're being ejected from the corridor, forcefully. Position." "That's the problem," the NAV officer answered grimly. "We didn't make it. By our latest NAV fix, we're still nearly 2 light years out." Jace's stomach turned. They were closer than they'd ever been, but still too far. Regular drives would take weeks. "Options?" he asked. Engineering cut in over the comm. Ren Kelly's voice was strained but focused. "Commander, I may have something. The core's intact, just unstable. If we divert plasma from the main reactor directly into the torrent chamber, we might be able to force one more jump. Short range only." "That sounds like a fast way to disintegrate," Jace replied. 30% chance of success, Ren said bluntly. 70, we blow ourselves apart. But it's our only shot at reaching Kalos in time. Jace turned toward the viewport. The stars out here were tranquil, unaware. They could stay in the void, repair, transmit everything they'd learned. They could survive. Or they could gamble it all for the lives of 5,000 souls staring into the heavens, waiting for salvation while the storm bore down. He closed his eyes. "Do it," he said. "Prepare for another jump." A murmur rippled across the bridge. No cheers, just the steady discipline of people who understood the cost. In the launch corridor, systems began to rearm. In the reactor chamber, fuel lines hissed open, rerouting volatile plasma. On the command deck, Lieutenant Juno Shea, Earth Intelligence Division, stepped forward. a datapad clutched in her gloved hands. A quiet chime preceded Lieutenant Juno Shea's approach. Her voice was low. "Commander, there's something else." She extended a datapad. Jace took it and scanned quickly. The display showed high-resolution sensor logs, collected during their brief emergence from the fold field. Jace's brow furrowed. "You're sure this is accurate?" Juno nodded, her jaw clenched. "Completely. Energy signatures, fleet composition, command algorithms. This isn't just any void formation. This is the fleet." Jace's eyes darkened. "Their central force." "And their warlord," Juno confirmed. "He's there. Akelos." Jace exhaled slowly, the full weight settling in his chest. "If we take them out now, we could break the spine of their entire offensive," he said. Juno nodded. "But even with the vanguard, with everything we've got, we're still facing long odds. They outgun us in every category." Jace handed the tablet back, expression unshaken. "Then we outthink them. Get this data to Colonel Thane and Tactical. I want coordinated strike plans now, something that hits them where it hurts." "Aye, Commander." The deck beneath them vibrated again. Power conduits groaned as the engineers rerouted every spare joule to the jump core. Jace crossed the bridge, voice steady over the ship-wide channel. "All stations, initiate emergency transit protocols. This jump will be worse than the last. Lock down and brace. Hold your lines." As crew scrambled to secure systems and gear, Jace returned to the command chair, buckled in, and stared at the star field ahead, its stillness deceiving. "The torrent is primed," Rin reported from engineering. "Reactor is unstable, but it'll burn one more hole through the veil." Jace took a breath. "For Earth. For Kalos. Jump." The vanguard surged forward like a god woken from sleep. Space twisted again and was gone. But this time, the tremble of the hull felt less like panic and more like purpose. This wasn't an experiment anymore. This was retaliation. And on Kalos' drift, the nightmare had only worsened. Captain Rylan Voss huddled behind shattered ferrocrete, his face streaked with blood and soot. The colony's northern shield had collapsed 6 hours earlier. Since then, void forces had descended like a plague, sweeping through districts, torching all resistance. Now, it was down to street warfare, crumbling corridors, breached buildings. Lieutenant Sarah Vale slid in beside him, her uniform torn, rifle clutched tightly. "They've reached Central Sector," she said between gasps. "We're down to maybe 20 holding it. They won't last long." Voss didn't speak. He had already ordered the remaining civilians into the lowest shelters. No comms, no backup, and their weapons were running dry. "What about East Block?" he asked. "Holding, but barely," Sarah answered. "Bennick wired some of the old mining shafts as traps. It's slowing them down." Suddenly, the ground erupted, a chain of explosions echoing from the east. Shrapnel pelted their cover. Dust choked the air. Voss shielded Sarah as debris rained down around them, his arm curled around her helmet. When the shock faded, he looked up through the settling haze. "We're falling back," he said, eyes grim. "Position 3. Final line." Weapons charged with a low whine. "We hold them here," Rylan said. "They do not reach the lower vaults." Sarah gave a terse nod, about to reply, when her comm crackled to life. She glanced at the readout and froze. "It's Bennick," she said, blinking. "He's still at the relay core. Says he's detecting a massive energy flux orbital level." Rylan's brow furrowed. "Reinforcements." She shook her head slowly, scanning the message. "No, he says it doesn't match void energy at all. It just appeared, out of nowhere." For a split second, something like hope stirred in Rylan's chest. He shoved it down. Hope with no foundation was a death sentence. Tell him it's likely a feedback glitch. Relay tech's ancient. Ignore it. But before the words finished leaving his lips, the sky above lit up, white and blinding. Both soldiers ducked, shielding their eyes as daylight was overwritten by something fiercer. When they looked up, the crimson haze of the void fleet was gone. In its place, streaks of piercing blue-white light, burning down from orbit like falling stars. "What is that?" Sarah breathed. Before Ryland could answer, his wrist comm flared to life. The voice that came through was steady, confident. "This is Commander Jace Rennick aboard the Vanguard. We received your signal, Kalos Colony. Reinforcements are inbound. Hold your ground." On the Maelstrom flagship, Warlord Xyrath stood tall above his command tier, talons tapping rhythmically, until the alarms shrieked. "What now?" he growled, tone edged with irritation. "Unknown anomaly above the colony," his sensor officer replied, mandibles twitching in confusion. "The energy profile, General, it doesn't match anything in our databases." "Display it," Xyrath commanded. The main screen shifted. Stars shimmered above Kalos, interrupted only by the orbiting armada. Then, space folded in on itself. A rift, like torn fabric, opened mid-orbit. From the fracture, an enormous vessel surged forth, unlike anything the void had ever faced. Its hull gleamed silver blue, lined with layered plating and glowing lance ports. Behind it, a flood of smaller craft poured through, sleek, angular, radiating raw velocity. Xyrath rose to his full height. No civilization commands instantaneous traversal. Not even the humans. "They can't be here." "Sir," his weapons officer shouted, "they've launched fighters, and dropships are descending to the surface." Xyrath's disbelief twisted into rage. "Redirect fire. All units, focus on the lead ship." The void fleet pivoted with precision. Weapons locked. Bolts of searing plasma screamed across space, slamming into the Vanguard. The human vessel absorbed the assault. Its shield shimmered like water struck by lightning, brilliant, beautiful, unbroken. "Their defense grid is resisting our barrages," one officer said, unable to mask the shock. "Unacceptable." Xyrath hissed. But even as he shouted, the Vanguard retaliated. From the Vanguard's prow, searing lances of ionized fury erupted, blue-white beams that pierced the stars. 3 of the Void's cruisers vanished in synchronized detonations. Shields failed instantly, hulls buckled, then tore apart in zero-atmo implosions. For the first time in his long and brutal career, Warlord Xyrath felt something rare, something dangerous: fear. On board the Vanguard, Commander Jace Rennick studied the battle map with quiet focus. Their arrival had fractured the Void Fleet's coordination. Formations unraveled. Command chains frayed. Panic spread like cracks in ice. "Lock onto their flagship," Jace ordered. "Strike their nerve center." Target acquired, Lieutenant Kale called back. "Fighters are green for launch." "And Colonel Thane?" "Dropships are loaded. He's waiting for the go." Jace gave a sharp nod. "Deploy all squadrons. Inform Thane he's clear to initiate ground ops." From deep within the carrier's underbelly, bays yawned open. Earth's fighters screamed into the vacuum, sleek, predatory interceptors darting like mercury across the void. Unlike the void's hulking dreadnoughts, these ships were built for agility, for violence in motion. They weaved and spun between enemy fire, spearing cruisers with missile clusters and microbeams. "Sir," the comms officer called out, link established with Kalos Defense Command. "Captain Voss is requesting immediate fire support in District Zenith." "Mark the coordinates," Jace said. "Relay them to Thane's unit. Tell him backup is inbound." The main display zoomed in on the enemy's flagship, a monolith of black alloy, bristling with artillery. Its core reactor throbbed like a heartbeat of death. "It's turning to bring its cannons to bear," Kale warned. Jace's mouth curved into a humorless smile. "Let them fire. Raise shields. Full return volley, main arrays only." The Vanguard's weapon grid surged to life. Massive capacitor rings spun up, funneling energy into the forward emitters. While the Void relied on brute force plasma, Earth's latest arsenal was surgical, phased particle columns designed to bypass traditional defenses. Fire. Twin beams leapt across space, razor precise. The Void flagship's barrier flared once, then shattered. The beams chewed through armor plating, exposing decks to the vacuum. Explosions blossomed across its spine. Direct impact. Tactical confirmed. Weapons grid offline, reactor unstable. Kale's voice chimed in again. Colonel Thane reports touchdown. Ground teams are active, engaging enemy squads in Sector Zenith. Jace allowed himself the first breath in hours. The battle wasn't over, but the unthinkable had happened. They were here, in time, and they were winning. On the shattered streets of Kalos Drift, Rylan and Sarah crouched behind rubble, weapons low. The ground shuddered. At first, they feared more Void artillery, until they saw the contrails. From above, unfamiliar ships sliced through the clouds, their hulls gleaming with blue and silver. Painted on their flanks, Earth's emblem. The Azure Sphere, home. A shimmering barrier wrapped the descending drop ships like a cocoon of blue fire. They came, Sarah whispered, voice trembling, eyes glistening. They actually came. Rylan couldn't find words. Against every expectation, against time itself, Earth had answered. And not in months. In days. It defied reason. But the proof was there in the sky, carving through smoke and ash. The transports landed behind their position in the cratered courtyard. Ramps hissed open. What emerged looked less like soldiers and more like myths, towering figures clad in exo-armor that shimmered with active defenses. Compared to the worn rifles of the colonists, their weapons were art, sleek, humming with untold power. One of them approached, tall, broad-shouldered, his helmet folding back with a mechanical whisper. "Commander Voss?" he asked. Ryla nodded, still reeling. "Thane Koran," the man said, extending a gauntlet hand. "Earth Division Aegis. We heard Kalos was in a tight spot." As Rylan gripped his hand, strength returned to his limbs like current through wire. "How?" he managed. "How the hell did you cross the stars this fast?" Thane smiled. "Prototype tech. They call it the Torrent Drive. First field run. Not exactly a smooth ride, but it got us here." Around them, his soldiers fanned out, taking firing positions with practiced precision. Rylan watched as the troopers activated linked defense grids, their armors synchronizing like a living wall. "What's the current sitrep?" Thane asked, his tone shifting from friendly to all business. Rylan snapped into briefing mode. Void troops entrenched in east and central sectors. Civilians sealed in vaults 4 and 5. We've set fallback lines, but we're thinning fast. Thane nodded. "Copy that." He turned, tapping his comms. "All units, deployed to Quadrants Alpha through Delta. Civilian protection is priority 1. Engage and dismantle all Void resistance. Show these freaks what it means to cross Earth." He looked back to Rylan. "Hold this ridge. We'll sweep the rest." Rylan straightened. The exhaustion that had gnawed at him for days lifted, replaced by something he hadn't felt since the first strike. Resolve. "We'll hold," he said, locking eyes with Thane. "Count on it." Above them, the orbital firefight raged on, a storm of fire and light. The Vanguard, Earth's flagship, danced between enemy salvos with unthinkable agility for a ship its size. Its triple-core engines twisted it sideways as alien plasma blasts streaked past. Commander Jace Rennick stood calmly at the center of his command deck, fingers laced behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical sphere. The ship rocked as it took a hit. "Pattern Delta," he ordered. "Focus fire on propulsion and weapon systems. No kills. Disable and isolate." Lieutenant Kale looked up, uncertain. "Sir, we need prisoners. Tech data. The Council wants to understand these things before we wipe them out." The command display pulsed. Earth's strike squadrons darted through the void like stingers, narrow, fast, brutal. Their sleek profiles evaded the Void's sluggish turrets. Each fighter carried enough firepower to rupture destroyer-class armor. But they didn't come to burn. They came to break, precisely methodically. And the enemy wasn't ready. Each strike from Earth squadrons landed with ruthless efficiency, targeting shield cores, disruptor turrets, and exposed hull seams. Enemy fleet is fragmenting, reported tactical. Formations are collapsing, they're pulling back. Commander Rennick narrowed his eyes. That wasn't right. This wasn't how the Void fought. They're stalling, he said coldly. They're repositioning. Cut their spine before they link again. Mark their flagship. I want it burning. The Vanguard's primary batteries spun up, vibrations humming through the entire bridge. The air shimmered, ion-charged, as energy built in the firing nodes. Then release. Twin arcs of concentrated fury carved through space, slamming into the Void command cruiser's propulsion banks. The massive vessel lurched, spinning as fire poured from its aft decks. Confirmed impact, came the call. Their drives are disabled, they're adrift. Jace allowed the corner of his mouth to twitch. Deploy strike teams. I want their high commander alive and on his knees. On the surface, what had begun as a last gasp had become a rising wave. Colonel Thane Coron surged through the fractured city streets, his exosuit hissing with kinetic deflections as alien bolts ricocheted off the plating. Advance, he roared, storming through shattered barricades. Keep pressure. Don't let them regroup. Alongside him, Rylan and the militia pressed forward. Where moments ago there had been despair, now there was drive, an unstoppable rhythm. The Void's foot soldiers, long used to slaughtering weak resistance, found themselves cornered and crushed by elite precision. Earth's operatives moved like phantoms, silent, surgical, coordinated. Through smoke and collapsed towers, they struck and vanished. In the plaza, Sarah fought shoulder to shoulder with troopers clad in sleek jet-black armor. The burn in her muscles had vanished. All that remained was purpose. They're falling back, she shouted over the thunder of rifles. Ryland scanned the perimeter, Void squads retreating, abandoning ground. Push through, he barked. Secure the bunkers before they regroup. A sudden explosion lit the sky. One of the Void's heavy crawlers erupted in flame, torn apart by an overhead orbital blast. Thane landed nearby, armor scorched and steaming. East perimeters cleared, he reported. Void's lines are breaking. They're fleeing to the LZs. Ryland's expression sharpened. They're extracting. Thane activated his uplink. Vanguard, this is Coron. Enemy forces are retreating toward exfil points. Request immediate air interdiction. Don't let them lift off. Affirmative, came Rennick's reply. Wings are rerouting. Confirmed. Void flagship disabled, boarding teams en route. Ryland staggered. The pace of the day was incomprehensible. Hours ago, they'd been buried in hopelessness. Now, the impossible was happening. We're winning, he asked aloud. Thane met his eyes, voice low. They've never faced warriors who fought back like this. Not like us. According to command, Thane muttered, eyes still scanning the skies, Void's been quietly erasing small settlements, testing species too weak to resist, like sharpening a blade before a war. He pointed upward, to the violent streaks of blue fire in orbit. But they miscalculated. Badly. That ship up there? The Vanguard? It's just Earth's first testbed. We've been gearing up for this the moment we step beyond our sun's reach. Above them, the heavens pulsed with fire, Void cruisers erupting in brilliant bursts as Earth's fighters danced between debris. They chose the wrong species to provoke, Thane said coldly. Today they learn what resistance really looks like. On the fractured command deck of the Void's flagship, High Warlord Kreth watched with growing dread. His once proud fleet, a force feared across star systems, was being torn apart. Every station around him was bathed in crimson light, alarms wailing like shrieks of the dying. Human boarding parties have breached levels 3 through 7, his lead guard shouted, voice tense, limbs twitching. Our forces can't repel them. They're weapons. We don't even understand how they function. Kretha's claws flexed, his armored frame trembling with rage. This couldn't be happening. These humans were supposed to be primitive, newly spacefaring. Now they moved through his flagship like reapers. How many vessels can still escape the gravity well? He growled. 15, maybe, his navigator replied, frantically pulling up star maps. The rest gone or crippled. A third of his armada annihilated. A catastrophe unlike any in void military history. Order the surviving ships to initiate jump protocols, Kreth barked. They are to return to the Citadel. Warned the High Circle, we have underestimated the Terrans. The officer hesitated. And you, Supreme Kreth? But before the warlord could answer, the sealed bulkhead to the bridge slid open with a cold hiss. Dozens of Earth soldiers flooded in, weapons drawn, sleek armor glinting in the red haze. A tall human stepped forward, eyes locked on the alien commander. His tone was disturbingly calm. High Warlord Kreth, I presume. I am Commander Jace Rennick of the Terran Strategic Command. Your fleet is finished. Your legions are collapsing. I recommend surrender. Kreth bared his fangs, hatred burning in his for crimson eyes. You believe this is a victory? Fool. You've won a skirmish. The void spans systems you haven't even named. We will return with legions, and we will purge your people from the stars. Rennick didn't blink. His voice remained level. That's unlikely. He took another step forward, the silence on the bridge thick as iron. While you are busy losing this battle, our AI tore through your databanks. We now have the locations of every forward base, every staging ground, every fleet trajectory, even your Citadel's coordinates. Kreth froze. That name, Citadel, should not be on any human tongue. At this moment, Rennick continued, Earth is mobilizing hundreds of ships just like the Vanguard. By the time you stand trial for your war crimes, the Void Empire will be nothing but myth. The warlord's eyes went wide, hatred giving way to the one emotion humans had never seen from his kind. Fear. Impossible, he rasped. Rennick's smile was razor thin. You thought that about this day, too. He looked around the shattered bridge, his voice dropping to a whisper only Kreth could hear. Reconsider what else you're wrong about. 3 days had passed. Haven, a colony once teetering on the edge of oblivion, had begun to stir with life again. Smoke no longer clouded its sky. The enemy had been routed, their warships either shattered or seized. What remained of their leadership? High Warlord Kreth and his inner circle sat confined aboard the Vanguard, awaiting extradition to Earth for judgment. Commander Elias Rourke stood quietly at the edge of the central plaza, where the scars of war were slowly being erased. Earth's engineers worked shoulder to shoulder with Haven settlers, welding, rebuilding, healing. Above them, the Vanguard glinted in low orbit, a steel sentinel against the stars, a symbol that Haven would never stand undefended again. Commander, came a familiar voice. He turned to see Mira, his second in command, approaching alongside Commander Jace Rennick of Earth's fleet. The last vaults have been cleared, Mira reported, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. All civilians accounted for. We didn't lose a single one. Elias exhaled, his relief quiet but immense. We owe Earth everything. But Jace shook his head. You owe yourself more than you think. That message you sent. Without it, we wouldn't have arrived until it was far too late. You turned the tide. Elias looked away, the question heavy in his chest. And now? What happens next? Now, Jace said, gazing upward as night began to spill across the horizon. Now, Earth understands the danger. The Vanguard will remain stationed here, our shield, while reinforcements are built. The Void tried to divide us, isolate us. They thought we were scattered, vulnerable, easy to silence. The stars winked into view, sharp and infinite above the colony. They were wrong, Jace finished. Humanity moves as one now. An assault on any world is a challenge to all. And we've shown what happens when Earth answers that call. Elias turned toward the landing pads, where restrained Void officers were being marched to transport shuttles. One figure paused, tall, defiant even in chains. "You," Kreth snarled, his voice thick with venom. "You should have fallen easily. No one was coming for you. You were nothing." Elias stepped closer, meeting the creature's gaze without flinching. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Help always comes. Just not in the way you expect." The warlord was pulled away. Elias turned back toward Haven. The colony stood battered, yes, but unbroken. Its people were alive. Their children were safe. And above them, Earth's strongest vessel kept vigil. A silent vow carried across the stars, to every outpost, every settlement, every voice crying into the dark. You are not alone. We will always come. Haven was just the beginning, and the galaxy will never be the same. If you enjoyed this story, give a thumbs up, share it with a fellow sci-fi fan, and let me know in the comments. What would you do if Earth was the only line of defense? Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of courage, survival, and humanity's rise among the stars. Until next time, stay sharp and stay human.
The morning Captain Elena Vasquez found herself staring into the compound eyes of humanity's first alien visitor. She had no idea that her German shepherd, Max, would become the catalyst for an interstellar crisis. The HFY research vessel whispered calculations had descended through Earth's atmosphere like a silver teardrop, settling into the Nevada desert with the grace of a falling feather. For 3 days, the world held its breath as humanity's greatest minds attempted to establish communication with beings whose very existence rewrote every assumption about our place in the universe. Elena stood at the edge of the hastily constructed diplomatic compound, watching the alien delegation emerge from their craft. The Keti moved with an unsettling fluidity, their elongated limbs carrying them across the sand with movements that seemed to flow like water. Their leader, who had identified himself through complex mathematical equations as Scholar Prime Zethmor, possessed skin that shifted between deep purple and silver, creating patterns that Elena suspected conveyed meaning beyond human comprehension. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Sarah Chen, the xenobiologist standing beside Elena. "Look at how their chromatophores respond to our presence. I think they're nervous?" Elena nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to the communication device at her belt. As the military liaison for this unprecedented first contact, she carried the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. Every word, every gesture could either open the doors to a golden age of cooperation or trigger humanity's destruction. But it was Max who broke the careful protocol. The German shepherd had been Elena's companion for 8 years, through tours in Afghanistan, peacekeeping missions in Eastern Europe, and countless lonely nights when duty kept her far from home. He was more than a military working dog. He was family. Which was why, despite regulations, she had smuggled him into the compound inside a supply truck. Max emerged from behind a cluster of communications equipment just as Scholar Prime Zethmor approached the human delegation. The dog's ears perked forward, his intelligent brown eyes fixed on the alien with the focused intensity that had made him legendary among bomb detection units. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Zethmor's skin flashed from silver to a violent crimson, patterns erupting across his surface like fire spreading through dry grass. The mathematical harmony of his movements shattered into something resembling panic, and a sound emerged from his throat, if the Keki had throats, that could only be described as a scream of pure terror. The words crackled through the translation matrix, their meaning arriving in Elena's mind with crystalline clarity: death-bonded predator. The other Ketas he scattered like startled birds, their graceful forms suddenly clumsy with fear. Within seconds, energy barriers shimmered to life around their positions, casting an eerie blue glow across the desert floor. Elena lunged forward, her hands raised in a universal gesture of peace, but Max had already begun to move. The dog approaches Ethmore with the steady confidence of a professional, his tail wagging slightly, a gesture that Elena recognized as his way of indicating a potential threat that required investigation. "Max, heel!" Elena's command rang across the compound, sharp with authority. The German shepherd immediately stopped and returned to her side, settling into a perfect sit position. His eyes never left the alien. Through the translation matrix, Zethmore's voice arrived laden with horror. You have bonded with it? The killing beast follows your commands?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic caution. "Scholar Prime, we need to explain. This creature, we called him a dog. He's not dangerous to us. He's our companion, our friend." The chromatophore patterns on Zethmore's skin shifted to what Elena was beginning to recognize as profound confusion. "Friend? You speak of friendship with a creature bred for slaughter? This is an abomination beyond our understanding." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert wind. In Max's intelligent gaze, she saw the same loyalty and devotion that had saved her life more times than she could count. The idea that this bond could be seen as monstrous was almost incomprehensible. "Scholar Prime," she said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss this in more detail. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of our relationship with our animal companions." "Animal companions," Zethmore repeated, the words emerging from the translator with a tone of sick fascination. "You speak of the death bodied as companions. Show us human leader Elena. Show us the full extent of this horror." Asterisk. The briefing room in the compound's main building had been hastily retrofitted with atmospheric processors to accommodate the HFY delegation. Elena sat across from Zethmore and two other aliens, identified as Combat Analyst Vexera and Life Scholar Hendai, while Max lay at her feet in a relaxed sphinx position. Dr. Chen activated the holographic display, showing a three-dimensional image of a wolf pack moving through a forest. "To understand our relationship with dogs, you must first understand their origins. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors encountered creatures like these wolves. They were indeed predators, capable of bringing down prey much larger than themselves." Vexera's skin pulsed with deep red alarm patterns. "And your ancestors? What did they do? Did they flee? Did they build barriers?" Elena smiled softly, running her fingers through Max's fur. "They offered them food. They shared their fires. Over generations, the wolves that were most tolerant of human presence survived and reproduced. We call this process domestication." "You bred them?" Hendy's chromatophores had shifted to a sickly yellow-green that Elena suspected indicated nausea. "You deliberately perpetuated the existence of killing machines?" "We shaped them," Dr. Chen corrected, "just as they shaped us. The relationship was mutually beneficial. The wolves, now dogs, gained reliable food sources and protection. Humans gained loyal companions, hunters, and guardians. The holographic display shifted to show the evolutionary progression from wolf to modern dog breeds. Elena watched the aliens' reactions with growing concern. Their revulsion seemed to deepen with each image. "This creature beside you," Zethmore said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is its purpose? What violence do you require of it?" Elena's hand stilled on Max's head. "He was trained to detect explosives, to save human lives. But his real purpose—" She paused, searching for words that could bridge the gap between species. "His real purpose is to be my friend, to offer comfort when I'm afraid, loyalty when I'm alone, and unconditional love when the world seems too dark to bear." "Love," Vexera repeated, the word emerging from the translator with an edge of disgust. "You speak of love with a creature designed to kill." "Yes," Elena said simply, "because he chooses not to kill." Every day, Max makes the choice to protect rather than harm, to serve rather than dominate. That choice, made freely by a creature capable of violence, means more to us than you can possibly understand. Hen. I lean forward, his skin now a deep troubled blue. Show us more of these companions. We must understand the full scope of this aberration. Dr. Chen's fingers danced across the holographic controls, and the display filled with images of cats lounging in sunbeams, horses carrying riders across meadows, falcons soaring through open skies with jesses trailing from their legs. The reaction was immediate and explosive. All three HFY rose from their seats, their skin flashing in synchronized patterns of horror and rage. Zethmore's voice cracked like thunder through the translation matrix. No more. We have seen enough. The holographic display flickered and died, leaving the room in tense silence. Elena could feel Max's muscles tense beneath her hand, the dog's instincts responding to the electric atmosphere of impending violence. Scholar Prime, Elena said carefully, I understand this is difficult for you to process, but difficult? Zethmore's chromatophores blazed with patterns that seemed to ride with their own life. You show us evidence of systematic predator cultivation on a planetary scale. You demonstrate the corruption of natural order itself. And you call this difficult? Vexera stepped forward, his movements now carrying a predatory grace that reminded Elena uncomfortably of Max stalking a potential threat. The flying killer, the winged death dealer, you bind it with restraints and force it to return to you? Falconry, Dr. Chen said quietly. It's one of our oldest partnerships with. The word exploded from Hendy with such force that the atmospheric processors hummed into overdrive. You speak of partnership with instruments of slaughter? Elena stood slowly, Max rising with her in perfect synchronization. Scholar Prime, I think we need to take a step back. There's clearly a fundamental difference in how our species' predation and the relationship between... There is no relationship. Zethmore's skin had gone completely black, shot through with veins of burning silver. There is only the corruption of natural law, the perversion of evolutionary order. You have turned your world into a breeding ground for monsters. The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Elena felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders, and for the first time since Takeshi had arrived, she wondered if first contact had been a terrible mistake. Max whined softly, pressing his head against her leg in a gesture of comfort that had been refined through millennia of human-canine coevolution. The simple act of compassion from a creature the aliens saw as a monster struck Elena with profound irony. Scholar Prime, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos of emotions churning in her chest. Perhaps we should adjourn for today. Both our species need time to process what we've learned. Zethmore's skin gradually shifted from black to a deep, troubled purple. Yes, we must consult with the Fleet Mind. This discovery changes everything we believed about your species. As the Ketai delegation filed out of the briefing room, Elena knelt beside Max and wrapped her arms around his neck. The German shepherd leaned into her embrace, offering the unconditional comfort that had sustained her through the darkest moments of her military career. What have we done, boy? She whispered into his fur. What have we done? 3 days passed in tense silence. The HFY remained in their ship, the silver teardrop that had become a symbol of either humanity's salvation or damnation, depending on one's perspective. Elena spent those days in endless briefings with world leaders, xenobiologists, and military strategists, all trying to understand how humanity's most cherished relationships had become evidence of our monstrosity in alien eyes. On the 4th morning, Zethmore requested another meeting. This time, he came alone. Elena found him standing at the edge of the compound, staring out at the desert where a small group of wild horses moved across the distant horizon. Max laid her feet as he had for every interaction with the Kefi, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of the gulf between species. They are beautiful, Zethmore said. his chromatophores displaying patterns Elena had not seen before, soft blues and greens that seemed almost wistful. In their natural state, they possess a grace that speaks to the harmony of evolutionary design. They do, Elena agreed carefully. But you have also corrupted them, have you not? Bent them to your will, forced them to carry you to serve your purposes? Elena considered her words carefully. We've formed partnerships with horses for thousands of years. They've helped us explore continents, build civilizations, fight wars, and create art. Many horses today live better lives than they would in the wild, safer, healthier, longer, at the cost of their freedom. At the cost of some freedoms, in exchange for others. A wild horse must spend most of its days searching for food, avoiding predators, competing for mates. A domestic horse is fed, protected, cared for, loved. It's not a simple equation. Zekmore's skin rippled with complex patterns that Elena was beginning to read as deep contemplation. Your companion, the death-bonded one, does it know it could kill you? Elena looked down at Max, whose brown eyes gazed back at her with the intelligent devotion that had defined their relationship for 8 years. Yes, he knows exactly how dangerous he is. That's what makes his choice to protect me so meaningful. Choice, Zekmore repeated. You believe it chooses? I know he does. Every day, in 1,000 small ways. He chooses to come when I call instead of chasing that rabbit. He chooses to sleep by my bed instead of claiming the most comfortable spot. He chooses to alert me to danger instead of simply running away. Elena's hand moved to Max's head, her fingers automatically finding the spot behind his ears that made him lean into her touch. A creature that can choose to harm but chooses to help, that's not a monster. That's a moral being. Zekmore was quiet for a long moment, his chromatophores cycling through patterns Elena couldn't interpret. Finally, he spoke. The fleet mind has reached a decision. We are to depart Earth immediately and recommend that your species be classified as dangerously aberrant. Contact will be severed, and your system will be marked as quarantine. Elena felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Scholar Prime, please, you have to understand. I understand that you have weaponized evolution itself. Zekmore's skin flashed with angry reds. You have taken the natural order and twisted it to serve your purposes. You have created an entire world where predators serve prey, where the strong submit to the weak, where the very foundations of biological reality have been corrupted. Or maybe, Elena said, her voice gaining strength, we've discovered something your species never has. Maybe we've learned that strength isn't just about the ability to kill, but about the choice not to. Maybe we found that the deepest bonds aren't formed through dominance, but through mutual respect and love. Love, Zekmore said, the word carrying a tone of profound sadness. You use that word so easily. Do you truly believe these creatures are capable of such emotion? I know they are. Elena knelt beside Max, looking directly into his eyes. Max, do you remember the night in Kabul, when the mortar rounds were falling? You could have run. You could have hidden. Instead, you covered my body with yours and stayed there until the all clear sounded. You were willing to die for me. If that's not love, what is? Max's tail thumped once against the ground at the sound of his name, and he pressed his muzzle against Elena's cheek in a gesture that needed no translation. Zekmore watched this exchange, his chromatophores cycling through increasingly complex patterns. The fleet mind believes your species represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability, a race that can convince predators to become servants, that can corrupt the natural order so completely such a species could reshape entire ecosystems, entire worlds. We could, Elena admitted, but we could also help. We could teach other species about cooperation, about finding strength in bonds rather than dominance. We could show the galaxy what's possible when different forms of life choose to work together instead of simply competing for survival. Or you could spread your corruption like a plague, turning the ordered universe into the same chaotic aberration you have made of Earth. Elena stood, her hand never leaving Max's head. Scholar Prime, what if I could show you something? What if I could demonstrate that our relationships with these animals aren't about corruption or control, but about something far more profound? Zethmore's skin shifted to deep purple curiosity. What do you propose? Give me 24 hours. Let me show you not just our bonds with individual animals, but how those bonds have shaped our entire civilization. Let me show you what we become because we chose partnership over dominance. And if your demonstration fails to convince the fleet mind, Elena met his gaze steadily. Then we'll accept your decision. We'll let you leave and we'll face whatever consequences come from being classified as dangerously aberrant. Zethmore stood in silence for a long moment, his chromatophore cycling through patterns that Elena suspected represented intense internal debate. Finally, he spoke, 24 hours. But know this, human leader. Elena, the fleet mind's patience is not infinite. If you cannot prove that your aberration serves some greater purpose, we will not merely leave. We will ensure that your corruption never spreads beyond this system. The threat hung in the desert air like the promise of a storm. Elena nodded, understanding that she had just wagered not only humanity's future among the stars, but possibly their very survival. As Zethmore walked away, his form shimmering in the heat haze, Elena knelt again beside Max. The German shepherd looked up at her with the same steady confidence that had carried them through countless dangerous missions. "One more job, boy," she whispered. "The most important one we've ever had." Elena spent the remainder of the day in frantic preparation. She reached out to contacts around the world, calling in favors accumulated over 2 decades of military service. By nightfall, a small army of specialists had converged on the compound: dog trainers, falconers, equestrians, marine biologists, and even a few experts in human-animal relationships that bordered on the miraculous. Dr. Chen worked alongside Elena through the night, assembling a presentation that would either save humanity or seal its doom. They had one chance to make the Kethi understand that what they saw as corruption was actually evolution's greatest triumph, the transcendence of simple survival to the power of interspecies cooperation. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Chen asked as dawn approached. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair disheveled and her clothes wrinkled from hours of work. Elena watched the sun rise over the Nevada desert, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. Max lay beside her, patient and alert, ready for whatever the day might bring. "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure about them, about what they represent, about what we become because of them." At precisely noon, the Kethi delegation emerged from their ship. This time, Zethmore was accompanied not just by Vexara and Handai, but by 2 additional figures whose chromatophore patterns indicated ranks Elena couldn't interpret. The fleet mind, it seemed, was taking this demonstration very seriously. "Scholar Prime," Elena greeted him with a formal bow. "Thank you for giving us this opportunity." "Do not thank us yet, human leader Elena. The fleet mind remains convinced that your species represents a fundamental threat to galactic order. You have claimed that your aberration serves some greater purpose. Prove it." Elena nodded to Dr. Chen, who activated the holographic display. But instead of showing images of domesticated animals, the projection filled with scenes of human civilization: cities rising from plains, hospitals saving lives, schools teaching children, spacecraft reaching toward the stars. "Before we formed partnership with animals," Elena began, "humans were just another species struggling for survival. We were clever, but we were also isolated. We faced the world alone with only our own strength and cunning to protect us." The display shifted to show early humans huddled around fires, vulnerable and afraid in a world full of predators. But then something unprecedented happened. We encountered wolves. Predators as intelligent and social as we were. And instead of seeing only enemies or prey, both species saw potential partners. The images changed to show the gradual process of domestication. Wolves learning to trust humans, humans learning to communicate with wolves, the slow evolution of working partnerships that benefited both species. That first partnership taught us something that changed the course of our entire civilization. Elena continued. We learned that strength doesn't come from domination, but from cooperation. We learned that the deepest bonds are formed not by conquering other forms of life, but by earning their trust and offering our own in return. Zethmore's chromatophors had shifted to patterns Elena was learning to recognize as intense concentration. Continue. The holographic display showed the expansion of human-animal partnerships. Horses carrying explorers across continents, dolphins helping fishermen locate schools of fish, dogs detecting diseases and guiding the blind, falcons controlling pest populations that threaten crops. Every partnership taught us new lessons about cooperation, communication, and mutual benefit, Elena said. We learned patience from horses, loyalty from dogs, independence from cats, grace from birds of prey. These relationships didn't make us weaker, they made us more complete. Henai stepped forward, his skin displaying skeptical yellow patterns. You claim these creatures made you stronger, but they are still your servants, still bound to your will. Elena smiled and raised her hand. From the crowd of specialists behind her, a figure emerged leading the most magnificent horse Elena had ever seen, a black Arabian stallion whose coat gleamed like obsidian in the desert sun. This is Midnight, Elena said as the horse approached. He belongs to Sarah Martinez, one of the world's finest equestrians. Sarah, would you show our guests how a true partnership works? Sarah nodded and approached Midnight without halter or lead rope. She spoke to the horse in soft tones, her hand extended in invitation rather than command. Midnight considered her for a moment, then stepped forward and lowered his head to accept her touch. What followed was a demonstration that transcended any simple definition of dominance or submission. Sarah and Midnight moved together in perfect harmony, the horse responding not to commands but to subtle shifts in the woman's posture, weight, and breathing. They danced across the sand in patterns that seemed to blur the line between human and horse, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. Where is the dominance? Elena asked as Sarah and Midnight completed their performance with a spectacular leap that seemed to defy gravity. I see only two beings who have chosen to trust each other completely, who have learned to communicate across the barriers of species, who have created beauty through cooperation. Vexara's skin had shifted to confused purple swirls. But the creature obeys her commands. Does it? Elena walked over to Sarah and Midnight. The horse stood calmly, but his dark eyes were alert and intelligent. Sarah, ask Midnight to do something he doesn't want to do. Sarah smiled and pointed toward a nearby cluster of thorny bushes. Midnight, would you walk through those brambles? The horse looked in the direction she indicated, then back at Sarah. He snorted once, a sound that clearly conveyed his opinion of the suggestion, and shook his head. He said no, Sarah laughed, stroking the horse's neck. And that's his right. True partnership means both parties can refuse. The bond works because we both choose to maintain it. Elena turned back to the Keti delegation. This is what you see as corruption, a relationship built on mutual choice, mutual benefit, and mutual respect. A bond that makes both species stronger, more capable, more complete than either could be alone. The display shifted again, showing images of human civilization that had been shaped by these partnerships, cities designed with green spaces for animals, medical advances discovered through studying animal behavior, art and literature inspired by our relationships with other species. These partnerships didn't corrupt us, Elena said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. They civilized us. They taught us that strength and wisdom could be found in the most unexpected places, that survival wasn't just about competition, but about cooperation, that the universe was vast enough for many different forms of intelligence to coexist and thrive. Zethmore stepped forward. His chromatophores now cycling through patterns of deep contemplation. And you believe this philosophy could be applied on a galactic scale? I believe it's the only way intelligent species can truly thrive, Elena replied. Look at what we've accomplished through partnership with creatures that can't even speak our language. Imagine what we could achieve in partnership with species as intelligent as ourselves. For a long moment, the only sound was a desert wind and the soft whisper of sand against the compound's walls. The Kehai stood in apparent communion, their chromatophores synchronizing in patterns that Elena suspected represented some form of silent communication. Finally, Zethmore spoke. The fleet mind requires additional evidence. We must witness this philosophy in action, not merely in demonstration. Elena felt her heart skip. What do you mean? We have observed your partnerships of ground dwellers and burden bearers. But you spoke of sky hunters, of flying predators that serve you. We must see this aberration for ourselves. Elena nodded to another member of her team, and Master Falconer James Whitehawk stepped forward. On his arm perched a red-tailed hawk, whose fierce golden eyes surveyed the alien delegation with regal disdain. This is Artemis, James said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades working with birds of prey. She's been my hunting partner for 7 years. Hendai's skin immediately flashed with alarm patterns. Partner? You speak of partnership with an apex predator? Watch, Elena said simply. James raised his arm, and Artemis launched herself into the desert sky with powerful wing beats. She climbed rapidly, becoming a dark speck against the azure dome of the heavens. For several minutes she soared in wide circles, riding the thermals with effortless grace. Then James raised his gloved hand and gave a sharp whistle. Artemis folded her wings and dove earthward with breathtaking speed, her trajectory aimed directly at the Kethai delegation. Elena heard Vexera make a sound that might have been terror, but she held up her hand for calm. At the last possible moment, Artemis spread her wings and landed gently on James's outstretched arm. She mantled briefly, displaying her magnificent plumage, then settled calmly to receive a small piece of meat from James's pouch. She could have kept flying, James said quietly. She could have disappeared into the desert and lived wild for the rest of her life. Instead, she chose to return, not because I compelled her, not because I control her, but because we built a relationship based on trust and mutual benefit. Zethmore's chromatophores had gone completely still, a reaction Elena hadn't seen before. The sky hunter, it returned voluntarily? They always do, James replied. Every flight is an act of faith on both sides. I trust her to return, and she trusts me to reward that return with food, care, and respect. It's a bond that has to be earned fresh every day. But why? Hendai's skin displayed patterns of profound confusion. What does the predator gain from this arrangement? James smiled and stroked Artemis's breast feathers with gentle fingers. The same thing we all gain from meaningful relationships. Companionship. Purpose. The knowledge that she matters to someone. She could survive in the wild, but here she thrives. She's part of something larger than herself. Elena stepped forward, sensing that this was the crucial moment. Scholar Prime, this is what you see as corruption, the creation of bonds that transcend survival, relationships built on choice rather than compulsion, partnerships that make all participants stronger and more complete. This is what humans have learned from our relationships with animals, that the universe is not a zero-sum game where one species' success must come at another's expense. Zethmore stood in silence for a long moment, his chromatophores cycling through increasingly complex patterns. Finally he spoke. The fleet mind finds your philosophy intriguing, but philosophy without testing is merely speculation. If you truly believe in the power of this cooperation, if you truly believe that partnership transcends dominance, then prove it. Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Form a partnership with us. Show the fleet mind that your philosophy can bridge not merely the gap between species, but between worlds. The challenge hung in the desert air like a thunderbolt waiting to strike. Elena felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders, not just human history, but the potential history of an entire galaxy where cooperation might replace conquest, where partnership might transcend the ancient cycle of predator and prey. What kind of partnership? She asked carefully. Zethmore's chromatophore shifted to patterns Elena was beginning to recognize as carefully controlled excitement. The fleet mind has monitored your species for several rotations, watching your expansion into space, your conflicts, your achievements. You are young, but you show promise. If your philosophy of partnership is genuine, then perhaps we can learn from each other. Vexera stepped forward, his skin displaying what Elena now understood were military patterns. But there are conditions. The fleet mind cannot risk exposing the broader galactic community to your influence without certainty of your intentions. What conditions? Elena asked. You must demonstrate your commitment to partnership over dominance in the most challenging circumstances possible, Zethmore explained. We will provide you with technology, advanced weapons, defensive systems, faster-than-light communications. Tools that could make your species the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy. Elena felt a chill of premonition. And? You must choose how to use them. If you use them to expand your territory, to conquer other worlds, to impose your will on lesser species, then the fleet mind will know that your philosophy of partnership is merely camouflage for a more sophisticated form of predation. And if we choose differently, then perhaps the galaxy will finally have an example of a species that has truly transcended the cycle of dominance and submission. A species capable of teaching others that strength can be found in cooperation rather than conquest. Elena looked around at the assembled team, scientists, trainers, military personnel, and the animals that had shaped human civilization for millennia. Max lay at her feet, patient and alert, ready for whatever challenges might come. Artemis perched on James's arm, her fierce eyes reflecting an intelligence that had learned to trust across the barriers of species. Midnight stood beside Sarah, the embodiment of partnership between human and horse. How long do we have to make this choice? Elena asked. The testing has already begun, Zethmore said, and Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The technology transfer will commence immediately. Within one of your solar rotations, you will have capabilities that can reshape this entire star system. How you choose to use them will determine not only your species' future, but the future of countless worlds that have yet to achieve spaceflight. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the enormity of the decision that lay ahead. When she opened them again, she found herself looking not at the alien delegation, but at Max. The German shepherd's brown eyes held the same steady confidence that had carried them through every challenge they had faced together. You want to know if we can be trusted with power, Elena said slowly. You want to know if we'll use advanced technology to dominate others, or if we'll find a way to use it for cooperation and mutual benefit. Precisely, Zethmore confirmed. Your species stands at a crossroads. You can become the galaxy's greatest predators, using your unique ability to form partnerships as a tool of conquest. Or you can become something unprecedented, a species that uses partnership to elevate all life. Elena stood, Max rising smoothly beside her. Scholar Prime, there's something you need to understand about the relationships between humans and animals. They're not just partnerships of convenience or mutual benefit. They're relationships built on love, loyalty, and trust. And those bonds don't weaken when they're tested. They grow stronger. She gestured toward the assembled demonstrations. Every person here has put their life in the hands, or hooves, or claws, or wings of a creature that was once humanity's natural enemy. We've learned to see potential allies where others see only threats. We've discovered that the deepest strength comes not from dominating others, but from earning their trust and offering our own in return. Elena met Zethmore's gaze directly, If you give us this technology, we won't use it to conquer. We'll use it to explore, to learn, to find new species that might become our partners in building something greater than any one world could achieve alone. And if other species threaten you, if they seek to use force against your people? Elena's smile was grim but determined. Then they'll discover that creatures raised alongside predators know how to fight when necessary. But we'll always choose partnership over conquest, cooperation over domination. Zethmore's chromatophore cycled through patterns of deep contemplation. Behind him, the other HFY seemed to be engaged in some form of silent communication, their skin patterns synchronizing and shifting in complex rhythms. Finally, Zethmore spoke. The fleet mind has reached a decision. You will be given the technology along with the knowledge that dozens of worlds are watching to see how you use it. Some hope you will succeed. Others expect you to fail spectacularly. A few actively plan to ensure your failure. Elena felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? Vexar stepped forward, his military patterns now clear and sharp. There are species in the galactic community who see cooperation as weakness, who believe that only the strong deserve to survive. They will test your philosophy in ways you cannot imagine. They will force you to choose between your ideals and your survival. Then we'll prove that ideals and survival aren't mutually exclusive, Elena said with quiet conviction. We'll show them what our animals have taught us, that the greatest strength comes from bonds forged in trust rather than fear. Hendy's skin displayed what Elena now recognized as profound curiosity. And if you fail? If your philosophy proves insufficient against species that have perfected the art of conquest? Elena knelt beside Max, her hand finding the familiar comfort of his fur. The German shepherd leaned into her touch, offering the unconditional support that had sustained her through the darkest moments of her military career. Around them, the assembled animals and their human partners stood ready, a living testament to the power of interspecies cooperation. Then at least we'll fail as ourselves, Elena said, rising to face the alien delegation. We'll fail as a species that chose love over fear, partnership over domination, hope over despair. And maybe that failure will teach the galaxy something valuable about the alternatives to conquest. Zeth Morris.